From the editors of Cook's Illustrated magazine, it's America's Test Kitchen. With your host, Christopher Kimball. Featuring Test Kitchen chefs Julia Collin-Davison, Bridget Lancaster, Becky Hayes, with Adam Reed in the equipment corner and Jack Bishop in the tasting lab. Discover the secrets of America's foremost food testers and tasters today on America's Test Kitchen. Today on America's Test Kitchen, Julia uncovers the secrets to fresh strawberry pie. Next, Adam reviews paring knives in the equipment corner. Finally, Yvonne shows Chris how to make the ultimate summer peach cake. That's all right here on America's Test Kitchen. America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances. For over 50 years, Miracle-Gro products have helped home chefs grow fresh vegetables and herbs. Miracle-Gro soils and plant foods provide the essential nutrients plants need to grow bountiful produce. Gardening tips are available online at miraclegro.com. By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. Chateau Saint Michel. Digital wine cellar and pairings can be found online. From our hands to your table. Recipes available at CaliforniaAvocado.com. And by Kohler. Diamond Crystal Salt, the gourmet choice. Plum Amazins from Sunsweet.
Before we make a strawberry pie with Julia, let's talk a little bit about pie dough and how to roll it out. This recipe is a vodka pie dough. It has extra moisture in it. It's part of the charm of the recipe, which means it's much easier to roll out. It's not too dry. And you can actually add more flour back to the dough as you work without destroying the dough and making it fall apart. So here it is. I have a tapered rolling pin, not a ball bearing rolling pin. It's a little bit thicker in the center, which is nice because you can actually feel the dough. So the first thing I'm going to do is roll it about a quarter turn and turn like that. And since I keep turning the dough, it means it's not going to stick to the board. It also keeps it in a fairly nice circle. Okay, now the dough is getting to a good size. You want to take a dough scraper, put your rolling pin near one edge, flip it over, and you can flour the board a little more. Put it down, use a little more flour on top. Now we're going to look at the dough and see where we need to even it out. You can see this is a little bit thicker, so I'll roll that out. This is the pie plate. In general, if you have a 9-inch pie plate, you want 4 more inches of diameter, which would be 13 inches, to give you enough room around the edge. That looks pretty good. And if you're just starting working with dough, letting it sit overnight in the refrigerator is very helpful. Again, we'll use the rolling pin to roll it over. And there you go. The first thing I'm going to do is press down the dough around the sides. That's so it gets deep down in the pie plate and it won't shrink when we bake it. You want to work fairly quickly at this point, especially if you have a hot kitchen like this one. Now, a pair of scissors works great, and I'm going to leave maybe ½ an inch or so. It's a single crust pie. A little more around here. And now we want to form the crust. First thing I'm going to do is fold it under all the way around. And if at any time the dough gets a little soft on you, you can throw it back in the fridge for 15, 20 minutes, or even in the freezer. Okay, so now we've folded that edge under, and now we're ready to flute. I'm pressing down with this finger also just to get it to stick to the edge of the pie plate. And there we are, okay? So put this in the fridge, let it firm up a little bit. Now, I mentioned a few minutes ago this was a vodka pie crust, so I'm going to go talk to Guy Crosby, our science editor, to have him explain why vodka. Okay, let's talk about pie dough. This has a real conundrum, which is that you want to add enough liquid so you can roll it out. If it's dry, it falls apart. But if you add too much liquid, in my experience, and everyone else agrees, you end up with a tough pie dough. So is it true that excess water, too much water, makes a tough pie dough?
Yeah, it's definitely true, Chris, and let's explain why. If we have flour, in that flour we have 2 proteins, glutenin and gliadin, and in dry flour they're literally in a frozen state of animation so that they don't move around. As soon as we add some water to that flour to make a dough then the proteins can come alive, just like cooking dry spaghetti, and it begins to move around. And when they contact each other, they can form chemical bonds with each other. And this starts to form gluten, which provides a lot of structure. But if we have too much water, we form too much gluten, and that just makes it too tough.
Okay, but I still want more water, so what do we do?
All right, so the secret is we use a mixture of water and vodka. In fact, we use a quarter cup water, quarter cup of vodka, and that gives us enough liquid to make the dough very, very pliable so we can roll it out. But the secret is vodka is half alcohol, and alcohol does not provide for the formation of gluten in these two proteins. So we get a soft dough, but at the same time we get a very tender pastry crust because we don't form as much gluten.
So alcohol doesn't react with proteins that create gluten.
Right.
So what happens in the oven? Everyone talks about this. All that alcohol just goes away. What happens?
It does. It does go away. And since that is an issue, we actually measure that. So we use a quarter cup of water, quarter cup of vodka, and we put that together. That's 4 tablespoons of each. And we found out at the end we had about 6 tablespoons of liquid within the pie dough. So we lost about 2 tablespoons when it was baking in the oven. And that virtually is all the alcohol that's evaporating to the point that you don't taste anything.
Okay, so here's the deal. You can start with more liquid at the beginning since we're using half vodka, which means the dough's easy to roll out. Once it's baked, however, that excess liquid, 2 tablespoons, goes away, and you end up with a nice flaky dough because you don't have excess water, right?
That's absolutely right, Chris.
Okay, so let's head into the kitchen with Julia and figure out how to make a great strawberry pie, and we're going to use this great vodka pie crust. So we got this lovely email, and this has to do with food superstitions. Now, this is one I'd never heard of. This is one from New Hampshire said, it's well known that one never eats the point first of any triangular piece of food, pizza, pie, etc. According to my grandmother, it will bring you bad luck. Did you hear this before?
No, I've never heard it.
And according to general consensus, you won't get your wish. So I searched the internet for other food superstitions. Here are 4 really good ones. You break an egg, either 2 yolks, it means someone's getting married.
Oh,
that's pretty good, okay?
I didn't know
if
that.
you slice into a whole loaf of bread, there's a hole inside, sometimes there is.
Yeah.
That means it looks like a coffin. Someone's gonna die. Okay, now things get weird. You put a cross on bread. You know why people put a cross on bread?
No.
So the devil won't sit on your bread and make it not rise. Now here's the best. If you break eggs and have shells, you have to crush the shells. Otherwise, a witch will come, steal the shells, make a boat out of it, sail to sea, and cause a storm. I mean, somebody had a lot of liquor and a long winter to figure that one out.
And that's a crafty witch.
We are now going to get rid of food superstitions and do some science and figure out how to do a scientifically perfect strawberry pie.
That's right. And we have 2 examples here of what we're not going to do. Now that, I'm sure, we've all seen these before.
At Shoney's and other
Potlucks,
places,
yeah,
yes.
truck stops, almost all Jell-O, a few strawberries thrown in there for looks, but really no flavor to speak of.
I can smell it, Jell-O.
Yeah, the Jell-O?
Yeah.
And then this gorgeous
What's
thing.
wrong with this?
Yeah, pastry cream, a nice tart shell,
Yeah.
glazy berries on top. That's not pie.
Okay, and
That
it's also
is a tart.
a fair amount of work.
Yeah.
Too.
It's all about the
This
strawberries.
is too franche.
That is very franche.
Okay.
So, the trick to making strawberry pie is all about the binder. It's what keeps those strawberries held together in the pie shell so you can actually slice it. And we tried a ton of things, but worked the best is starting with fresh strawberries. What we're going to do is we're going to take 6 ounces of strawberries, and because the pie is going to be filled with strawberries and we're going to puree these, you pick the ugliest ones. So 6 of the ugly ducklings. If they're a little big, you just cut them in half so that they'll process down really quickly. So we're just going to puree this until it's nice and smooth. All right, so here is a nice puree of fresh strawberries that will be the base of our thickener for the pie. And I'm going to set them aside just for the moment while we put together the rest of the ingredients for the binder. Now this is 3/4 cup of sugar. So now we're getting to the interesting part of the recipe, the thickeners, and we tried a ton of things. In fact, if you don't mind, I have a board over there with just a few of the things we tried. And believe me, this took about 20, 30 tests to find the right thickener. Now we started with strawberry jam. You find this in a lot of recipes, and it works pretty well, but the flavor, it just it tastes cooked and it mutes the fresh flavor of the strawberries. This is a refrigerator pie, so you don't want the cooked strawberry flavor. And also it's cloyingly sweet. We tried apples, grated fresh
I
apples.
like that trick. That's a good trick. Yeah.
It is, if it's a cooked pie again, a baked pie, but this is going in the refrigerator, so the texture and the flavor of the apples really stood out.
Because we use this for a blueberry pie.
That's right, yeah. And we tried all sorts of flour, potato starch, arrowroot, tapioca, much too cloudy. You could really taste it and you could sense it on your tongue, so that didn't work. So, but what we liked about these, of course, the thickening power is pectin, and that worked pretty well. And of course, you can buy pectin. Now, two types of pectin sold in the store, the yellow box and the pink box. Yellow box is for high sugary foods like jams. Pink box, which is the one we want here, is for low acid foods. And also cornstarch worked pretty well, but as you remember, cornstarch, it thickens the sauce, but it doesn't set it. Whereas the pectin just set it, but it set it too firmly. Use a combination of the two, you get the best of both worlds. This is 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and this is 1.5 teaspoons of the low sugar pectin. Whisk this together.
So the high sugar pectin just doesn't work unless there's enough sugar.
And if you use the yellow box, it won't set up. So that was a pinch of salt I threw in there. We're gonna whisk this together. And now we're gonna stir in our fresh berry puree. There we go. So we're gonna bring it to a boil. It'll be nice and thick. And you wanna make sure you get into the corners of the pot. And this should really just take a couple minutes. All right, so you can see that coming to the boil, and that's activating the cornstarch and the sugar gel. And we're gonna bring it to a boil and let it cook again for about 2 minutes. And you can see it's nice and thick and glossy. All right, so you wanna transfer it to a bowl. And just for a little bit of brightness, this is a tablespoon of fresh lemon juice. So we're gonna let this cool to room temperature, and then we'll come back and finish up the pie.
Okay. See, once in a while, I actually do some work around here. Once in a great while. So I did bake this at 425.
Beautiful.
15 minutes. Pie weights, took them off. Another 7 or 8 minutes just to get it nice and brown.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah,
and it's cooled. So this filling that we made with the strawberry puree is now cooled. And now we're going to add our 2 pounds of strawberries. And this is one of the old classic recipes for strawberry pie where you don't cut them. And it's good because when you cut strawberries, they release all that liquid. And then, of course, the pie gets soupy. And now we're just gonna pile them into the pie shell. Now this may look like a mistake because it looks really gloppy and thick on the strawberries, but even though they're whole, they will release some moisture and loosen up that filling to just the right consistency. Once you pile them in there, you're gonna get your hands dirty and just start to poke them in. So I'm filling in all the gaps, mounding it a little bit in the center, and that's it. We're gonna put this in the refrigerator for about 2 hours, let it set up and let the berries release their juice, and then we're ready to eat.
Yeah, what a transformation.
Isn't that beautiful? All right, now, obviously, this is a little bit of a challenge to serve because of the whole berries. And you know, I like using a little serrated knife like the steak knife. I just find it can slice right through the berries and nicely through the crust. And I'm gonna give you nice big slices here.
Look at that.
All right, beautiful. And now a little whipped cream.
Okay, can we just admire this from? It's mile high.
This is amazing.
This is really good.
The flavor of the strawberries is really unadulterated, but it's just held together enough to shape into a pie.
So who would have thought the secret to a great strawberry pie was 2 pounds of whole strawberries? This is very pure, and we used a little bit of strawberry puree, some sugar, a little cornstarch, and low sugar pectin held everything together. Of course, a delicious pre-baked pie crust using vodka. So there you have it, a fabulous recipe from America's Test Kitchen to your kitchen, an all-natural, delicious, flavorful strawberry pie. I absolutely adore kitchen tools, gadgets, appliances. I love them. They're features. You can buy different ones. You can test them out, different colors, different designs. But there's one thing in the kitchen that's just incredibly boring. That's a paring knife. It's more boring than spatulas. It's more boring than whisks. It's more boring than parchment paper. So I'm here. I need some enthusiasm. Excite me. Tell me why I care about a paring knife.
Them's fighting words, Chris Kimball.
They are.
These things are all exciting. I found out that a couple of paring knives have been designed. Ooh, this is exciting.
I'm getting excited.
With those thin Asian cutting edge geometry of 14 or 15 degrees compared to the traditional American geometry of 20 to 22 degrees. And that called for a whole new testing of paring knives. We have 10 different models here. Price range was $4.95. up to $70 for a paring knife, believe it or not. And we did all of the standard sorts of things you would use a paring knife for. We minced shallots, we hulled strawberries, we peeled, cored, and sliced apples. There are a couple of design factors that we picked up on right away. We tend to like knives that are in the 3.5-inch range. You can see this knife I'm holding on the bottom is a 4-inch blade compared to a 3.25-inch blade on the top. This was too much blade for some of those tasks like hulling strawberries. Another thing that we picked up on was the balance of the weight on the knife. This model, for instance, was really weighted towards the handle, and some testers commented that the handle almost pulled the blade away from the work. Why don't you take this knife and hull a couple of strawberries with it? We found out that knives like that one that have a very fine point to the tip felt more agile and easier to maneuver around the core. I'm going to give you a comparison. Why don't you try this knife? That one has a blunt tip.
Yeah, this
and
doesn't,
you can feel that one doesn't feel quite as precise, quite as easy to use.
It's horsey. Okay.
So I'm going to have you use this knife here to cut sections from that orange.
This is a Chicago something.
Right, it's got a big bulky handle. This one was not quite as sharp as some of the others.
Okay.
And we got oozy, drippy sections from this. Again, why don't you try it with this one, the one with the pointed tip.
Yeah, this is not great.
Yeah, not fabulous.
This one again?
That was a big difference. That's this knife. Very sharp. We got good,
nice,
crisp segments from that.
Yeah. That's much easier, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely good. So in the end, we actually liked this knife the best. This is the Wüsthof Classic PE Tech. This is one of those knives that was redesigned with the thinner cutting edge. It felt nice and sharp on all of our tasks. It had a great handle, nice balance between the handle and the blade. We like the fine point. $40. Are you excited yet?
Yeah, about
I have
40
a Best
bucks.
Buy. This will excite you. This is the Victorinox Fibrox. This is our old favorite. It's 3.25-inch blade. Also has a very fine tip, nice balance, a little bit lightweight, but does a great job, and you'll love the price. It's $4.95.
So Adam thinks there's the choice. I think that the Victorinox Fibrox at $5. I mean, come on, for $5, it's a winner. If you have the money, you want to spend it for a slightly better knife, would be the Wüsthof Classic at $40. $5? $5 is a winner for me. You know, it's hard being a peach. People love me from the outside, but when they cut into me, all my juices come out and I just ruin cakes. So let's go into the test kitchen with Yvonne and figure out how to take a nice juicy peach but turn out a fabulous summer peach cake. So this is the Department of Pronunciation Problems here at America's Test Kitchen. An email just came in, said, please tell Chris Kimball to stop pronouncing Ghirardelli with a soft G, you know, Ghirardelli, as I've heard him do many times. Think ghost, ghastly, ghetto, Ghana, Ghee, gherkin, and ghoul. So I shouldn't say Jost, Jasly, Jetto, Jana, G, Jerkin, and Joule.
That is a tongue
Or
twister.
Jumbo instead of Gumbo, I guess. Okay, point noted. Thank you for listening so carefully to our show. And now for something much more interesting, which is a peach cake.
So we were looking to create a rustic style peach cake that took advantage of really flavorful and in-season peaches. And most of the cakes that I started out with had a very small amount of peaches, and it's no wonder because peaches exude tons of juice. So that was our main challenge, to get a lot of peaches in the cake and to figure out a way to deal with the extra juice. So I'm going to start with the peaches, and I have 2.5 pounds of ripe peaches here, and I set aside 24 half-inch slices, and these are going to go on the top of the cake. And one of the things that we wanted to do is to get rid of some of that extra juice. So I'm going to start by macerating these peaches, and I have 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar, and then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. And then we also wanted to increase the peach flavor, and this is especially important if you're using peaches that are a little less than prime. And I have 2 tablespoons of peach schnapps. Stir this together. So I'm going to set that aside, and then I'm going to finish prepping the rest of my peaches. And this is a really easy way to get the pit out of a peach. You just place the knife down into the peach and just roll it around the pit, and just kind of twist the knife, and it should come right out.
So, you know, the problem with peaches with juice, it isn't that peaches actually have more water, because we looked into this. Actually, plums, which don't seem to have as much juice, they're both 85% water. The problem with peaches, they don't have a lot of pectin, where plums do, for example. So when you bake or you heat a plum, the cell walls actually hold together better because the pectin is like glue. But in peaches, they fall apart and all the water comes out. So it's not that they are juicier to start with, but those cell walls will break down more quickly.
And we started with about half the amount of peaches in our cake, and we found that it just didn't have enough fruit, didn't have enough peach flavor, so we kept increasing the peaches. But we found that with all the juice, it just affected the crumb too much. It made the cake really sodden and gummy. So what I realized was the best way to get rid of all of that moisture was to actually roast the peaches. So I have my peaches that are going to go into the cake. So like the other peaches that are going to go on top, I'm going to kind of start to get the maceration process going. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and then 2 teaspoons of lemon juice for flavor, and 3 tablespoons of peach schnapps in these. Now I'm going to spread these in a single layer on a rimmed baking sheet. So I lined it with some heavy-duty aluminum foil, and I've also sprayed it with vegetable oil spray. And now I'm going to roast it in a 425-degree oven until the juices start to thicken a little bit and start to caramelize on the corners of the pan. And this is going to take about 20 to 25 minutes. So Chris, I've roasted my peaches, and you can see they've kind of shriveled a little bit. I've let them cool, and now it's time to make the cake. So I'm going to start with my dry ingredients, and I have 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder. Whisk this together to combine. And now on to the wet ingredients. So I have 2 large eggs, and 1/3 cup of granulated sugar, and 1/2 cup of packed light brown sugar. I'm just going to whisk this until it's combined and lightened a little bit, and that's going to take about 45 seconds. Okay, so now I'm going to whisk in 8 tablespoons of melted and slightly cooled unsalted butter. And then I have 1/4 cup of sour cream. And this tanginess to the sour cream is going to go really nice with the peaches as well. And 1½ teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract. So now I'm just going to whisk the dry ingredients into the wet until combined. Okay. So now back to the peaches.
Okay.
So to absorb any of the extra juices that the peaches exude while the cake bakes, we're going to just simply toss these with 1/3 cup of crushed panko crumbs. And panko is a Japanese-style breadcrumb. They tend to be a little bit coarser crumbed, and they're lighter. So instead of just dumping all those peaches in and folding it into the batter, I'm actually going to layer the peaches in with the cake. If I just folded it into the batter, it would rub all of that panko off.
Okay.
So I'm going to add half of the batter to a 9-inch springform pan that I've lightly sprayed with vegetable spray. I'm just going to use a small offset spatula to smooth it out. And now I'm going to add the peaches. So then I'm going to add the rest of the batter right on top. Okay, I just gently spread again. I don't want to knock too much of the panko off the peaches. And now I'm going to add these peaches to the top of the cake in a pretty fan. We didn't need to roast these peaches that are going on the top because a lot of the juice is going to evaporate naturally. I'll just add a few to the center. One last thing. I have 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar and 1/8 teaspoon of almond extract. Just going to stir this together just to moisten the sugar. And I'm just going to sprinkle it on top. And as this cake bakes, the sugar is going to create a nice crackly sort of texture on the top of the cake. Bake this in the 350-degree oven until it's nice and golden, the top is set, and a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean, and that's going to take about 50 to 60 minutes. Let the cake cool in the pan for 5 minutes, then run a knife along the inside of the pan to loosen, remove the springform pan sides, and then let the cake cool completely, about 2 to 3 hours. So we are ready to eat some peach cake.
We sure are.
That looks so pretty. Here you go.
Boy, this is unbelievably good.
Very peachy.
Very peachy, has a little almond thing going on. The top is a little bit crisp. This is why we get up in the morning. So great peach cake starts with getting rid of the excess moisture in peaches, which we did in the oven. Then we made a nice batter, but we also coated those peaches with some panko crumbs, layered them right in the middle, and then baked them in a springform pan. Of course, let it cool for at least a couple hours. And there you have it, from America's Test Kitchen, New York Kitchen, a fabulous A1 Blue Ribbon dessert peach cake. You can get this recipe and all the recipes from this season, our tasting and testing results at americastestkitchentv.com, and also watch selected episodes of the show. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Excellent, excellent job.
Thank you.
America's Test Kitchen is brought to you by DCS by Fisher & Paykel. America's cooks rely on innovation and culinary precision. DCS by Fisher & Paykel, offering premium indoor and outdoor kitchen appliances.
And by Kohler, inspiring home chefs to create a professional level kitchen with innovative sinks, faucets, and cook centers. Kohler.
And by Diamond Crystal Salt for the professional chef and those who want to cook like one. Diamond Crystal, the gourmet choice. By Cooking.com, an online retailer for the kitchen enthusiast. If it's not in your kitchen, try ours. By Plum Amazins, diced dried plums from Sunsweet for amazing recipes. By Miracle Grow, the gardener's friend. By California Avocados. And by Chateau San Michel.